Welcome to Slash Forward, and to another installment of the Monsters of Horror, backed by popular demand. This video will diverge slightly from the first. Rather than creating a comparison of evils from within the movie we're discussing, we'll go right into the sociopath of interest. The difference will be that, in the end, we'll do a brief comparison to ascertain the overall top monster. With those rules set, let's get to the topic of this segment, which will be Judy from Sleepaway Camp. And Judy is a special case because we managed to come across her right as her psychopathy was beginning to blossom. It's sort of a fortunate, unfortunate catch-22 in this case, because as we'll see, the events that transpire at Camp Airwalk serve to both instigate and eliminate the emergence of this intriguing behavioral suite. What we find, as evidenced by Ricky's testimony, is a young lady in the midst of puberty. Like most girls, she begins this process earlier than boys her own age. Unlike most others, she manages to achieve a full-fledged adult orientation in short time. We don't fully know why this manifests in such an extreme mistreatment of her peers, however. Perhaps this transformation is concurrent with some sort of significant trauma to which we are not privy. Since we find her at summer camp, we're primarily aware only of what she makes outwardly obvious while at camp. Another possibility could be that she's suffering from a more mild but persistent trauma that makes her feel constantly worthless in her daily life. Camp, then, presents an opportunity to recreate herself, to be born again in an image of her own making, providing her an intoxicating degree of control she hasn't previously experienced. This seems more likely given the sequence of events that unfold. She finds herself at camp, surrounded by the worst influences possible in the form of irresponsible counselors and perverts. She finds an almost immediate rush of gratification and influence derived from her outward assertion of sexual power. This is evidenced by the nearly constant group of young men that surround her, desperate enough and willing to put up with almost any abuse in the hopes of quenching their thirst. We get a very direct confirmation of this as she instructs her paramour in proper technique as they are engaged in the act of necking. All of this is likely exacerbated by hormones, but also the presence of her toady Meg, and the events transpiring at the camp. Meg feeds off of Judy's control and power, creating a negative feedback loop. She's empowered through Judy's violent temper to act in an antisocial manner. Her behavior is never rebuffed. It's always encouraged or escalated by Judy. Conversely, this acts as a positive reinforcement for Judy, who never fails to find recognition and encouragement from Meg. The two of them together take what could have been a mild irritation and turn it into a runaway freight train, rocketing toward catastrophe. Add to this the instances of violence at the camp. There is an abundance of unusual and unusually harsh violent occurrences, far more than is acceptable at any camp and well beyond the normal experience of children and adolescents. All of this is happening right as Judy is reaching her peak, conflating the satisfaction derived from her newfound power with the violence that surrounds her, resulting in a sexually sadistic mode that is a prime recipe for developing into something far more serious. And we see this in the way that she begins to objectify the other campers. The boys are objects of her pleasure, and she changes the focus of her desires for purposes related to manipulation and the aggrandization of suffering. She views Angela as a threat only because she has the attention of others, even if the attention is negative. Judy can't penetrate her glare or manipulate her emotions, so she shows a clear willingness to escalate this loss of control to physical violence. The only limiting factor here is that she takes it too far, too fast, and, failing to see beyond her own desires to ascertain and predict the intentions of others, gets herself killed. This, however, could be a mere matter of inexperience, which brings us to our conclusion. Judy is clearly a psychopath, but is she worse than Rick? It's hard to say for sure. From all outward appearances, she's certainly more explicitly aggressive and assertive about her intentions, but then she's also possibly much younger. It's not clear what age Rick is in Friday the 13th Part 3, but he appears to be fully grown, whereas she's just beginning to manifest her sociopathic tendencies, likely as a result of her recent unknown trauma, a sudden influx of hormones due to puberty, and the fact that she finds herself, under these conditions, in an environment with minimal supervision and an abundance of negative external stimuli, along with a willing partner to encourage and support her most sadistic desires. In contrast, Rick is significantly more subtle in his abuse, and he's killed before we get to see him enact any of his grand machinations. It could be that Rick has simply been living with his condition for a longer period of time and has grown more accustomed to working through the complications involved in masking his true self, and has a better understanding of what type of outward appearances are required to be accepted by general company. Unfortunately, we can never make a proper assessment of this because his ultimate plans for Chris are unknown. We lost our opportunity when every thought he ever thunk was squeezed through his eye socket by Jason. And since this is mainly conjecture, we're forced to work with what we have. Rick may have been more sophisticated, but he may also have just been an asshole who considered himself a master coxman. Judy, conversely, clearly asserted her nastiness in a way that was outwardly apparent. However, there's also the chance that some of this would normalize over time. As a result, we have to stick with an objective quantification. All else equal, Judy comes out ahead. She was more physically violent than Rick, she had the assistance and exacerbation of a partner, and she showed no signs of slowing down. In consideration of this, we have to accept Judy as our new Dark Queen of the Monsters of Horror. Will she be dethroned? Only time will tell. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.